This video is about the buyer's walkthrough and what to expect so you can avoid some unpleasant surprises. The walkthrough is a tour through the property just prior to settlement. Sometimes it's the day of settlement, sometimes a day or maybe two before, but the intention is to have it done very close to settlement. And its purpose is threefold. The first part of it is to make sure that the property is in the same condition as it was when you purchased it. The second is if any repairs were agreed upon, that those repairs have been made. The last thing is that the things you expect to find there in terms of things that have been included or they're intended to be left behind with the property are there, and that anything that was excluded that you expected that the sellers would take with them has indeed been removed. This also includes trash. A lot of times sellers leave a bunch of trash in the garage, and it's not supposed to be up to you to make sure that large quantities of trash get taken to the dump or get picked up. So that's sort of the purpose of the walkthrough. Those three things are what you're looking for. So as far as the property being in the same condition it was purchased in, the caveat in the agreement of sale says absent minor or absent normal wear and tear. So you're looking for things that might be broken that weren't broken when you visited the property. For example, if there's a broken window, if there's a torn screen. One of the things that I always do when I go through a house for a walkthrough is I test all the appliances. I make sure the burners all work on the stove. I make sure that the oven comes to temperature, the microwave comes to temperature. I run the dishwasher and make sure it doesn't leak. Leaks are a big thing, so I always flush all the toilets, run the sinks and the showers, run them a little while, and then turn them off and look underneath the sinks and anywhere else I can look to see if there's anything that seems like it's leaking. The other things you might want to check are things like whether doors all close and lock properly. Anything that might be worth checking that you can easily tell if it weren't in the same condition as when you purchased. Repairs are the next thing to check. So if you and the seller have agreed to specific repairs, you want to have a checklist with you because you will have written and signed an addendum specifying what needs to be done. So you should go down that list item by item, and to the extent that you're able, make sure those repairs have been done properly. Another thing you do want to check, getting back to where I was before, is heat and air conditioning. Now, you can't check the air conditioning if it is cold outside. It's bad for the system to turn it on, but depending on the time of year, do try to check that those systems are working well also. So the last thing is inclusions and exclusions. So according to the agreement of sale, anything attached to the property, unless otherwise agreed upon, stays with the property. So that includes things like built-in bookshelves and chandeliers and things like that. So unless you've excluded something, if you notice the dining room chandelier is gone, that's something to discuss with your agent because that wasn't supposed to be taken. I had a client who bought a house, and when we did the walkthrough, many of the switch plate covers for the light switches, which had been decorative, were removed, but those aren't screwed into the house, so they are supposed to go with the house. So you don't want anything missing that you expected to be there. Conversely, if there are things that are personal property that are not attached to the house and you expect them to be taken away and they're still there, that's another issue. One of the big ones you see is pool tables. Pool tables, especially because they're often in basements, are very costly to move. They're expensive and they have to be taken apart. So a lot of people don't want to pay to have them taken out of a house. But unless you have expressly agreed to have it left and you don't want a pool table, the seller can't just leave it. They can't leave extra furniture. I was in a house a few months ago and all of the cruddy basement furniture was just left behind, these old gross sofas, and I said, no, the buyer's not paying to have a junk removal service come and move this. That's the seller's responsibility. So do make sure that you're clear on what should be included, what should be excluded, and that you check. The other thing that's going to happen during the walkthrough, and this is assuming that the sellers have moved out. It's always best to do the walkthrough after the sellers have moved out so you can tell if they've taken or left things that they weren't supposed to. And that you can see if there's been any damage done from their moving out, like a scratch in the wall from people carrying a sofa downstairs or something. It's not always possible. Sometimes people are moving up till an hour before settlement, which is inconvenient as far as the walkthrough, but you can only do what you can do. So if the house is empty, a lot of times buyers are surprised by some of the things they notice at the walkthrough. For example, they'll notice that the floor, say a wood floor, that it has had a carpet over it, a throw rug that's gone, is lighter than the floor around it because the carpet has covered it up, and it's like a suntan stain. And they are understandably disappointed to see that because the floor now is uneven in color. But that's just something that happens when you have rugs. So the seller's not going to change that. Similarly, when people remove things from the walls, not only can there be some discoloration from pictures that were there, but there are sometimes nails or nail holes or picture hangers. Things that are small, like a nail hole or a picture hanger, the holes they make or even leaving them in the walls, that's considered acceptable. The only things that sellers are supposed to repair walls for are if they take something out that is substantially larger. There is not a set size like 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 of an inch, but in general, things like picture hangers, they're not expected to fill those holes or patch the walls or paint because it would become too big a project to do right before settlement. If they had to patch and then the patch doesn't match, then they have to paint. And if the paint on the wall is faded, then that doesn't match. Then they have to paint the whole house and it becomes a whole set of dominoes. So expect to see things like faded floors and things on the walls where there are nail holes. And understand that when you go and you look at the house empty, you see all the imperfections, all of those baseboards that may have been hidden by furniture. You can see that there may be a little nicked or they need paint. And while it can be surprising, remember that not only can you potentially touch those things up, but once you get your furnishings in the house, a lot of that may be covered up as well. So when you do the walkthrough, go in understanding what it is you're supposed to be looking for and having an idea of what to expect, and it will go much more smoothly.